Okay, it's here. It's my very favorite time of the year, and that is Halloween season. And I say Halloween season because I personally get in the mood for Halloween way before October. In fact, I think my record was actually setting up Halloween decorations in July, but that was in the year of 2020, so cut me some slack. Now, today we're going to be ringing in the Halloween season with a vintagey, spooky, interactive greeting card, but I'm also going to be throwing in a bonus project in this video using some supplies from the sponsor of today's video, Cricut. Thanks, Cricut. All of that to say, we do have a lot to get through in this very short time that we have together, so let's go ahead and jump to it. Okay, for today's project, we are using quite the assortment of products, but most of which come from the September release from Hero Arts, which is full of Halloween goodness. Now, the reason I'm not walking through all the products up front is because, frankly, I don't have them organized very well or in their original packaging, so I don't think it would be that helpful. But as I use them, I'll be sure to mention what they are, and I'll also leave the links down to all of the products I use today in the description. We're going to start the card off by stamping the entire background, and for the background stamp, I am using the 6x6 inch red rubber cling stamp, which is Hero Arts cling stamp of the month for September. And I don't know if you can tell, but it is basically spider webs with some spooky looking chandeliers as well. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp that on an A2 size piece of cardstock. I am using a light gray color. This is the color Granite, also from Hero Arts. And I like to do my cling stamps down in the MISTI and then put a little tape runner on my cardstock and press the paper into the stamp. You don't have to do it that way. You could, of course, have the paper down here with your stamp on the lid, or if you don't have a MISTI, you can always put your cling stamp directly on your work surface and then just lay your cardstock on top and press. But as I mentioned, for today, I'm going to do it my preferred way because it's my card. And for the ink color, I'm going to go in with charcoal, which is a dark gray. And I'm just going to ink up this entire background stamp. Well, at least most of it. I'm not going to get the edges because I know the paper's not going to reach all the way to the edges, but I do want to make sure that I have nice coverage all through the middle. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and press down. Oh, I can already tell I missed some of the edges, but that's okay. Let's press and then see where we might need to reapply. And this is where the MISTI comes in handy, right? Oh, actually, I went all the way to the edge, but I do think it could do with another layer of ink. So I'm going to just ink it up again and do one more press. All right, beautiful. And the ink is going to kind of soak into the paper a little bit as it dries, so the ink will become a little more faint, which is exactly what I want. Okay, let's set that aside for now. Actually, I'm wrong. I don't want to set that aside yet because there are a couple more things I want to do to our background before we move on. The first thing I want to do is ink blend the edges, so I'm going to go in with a black dye-based ink, and for this I'm going to use Distress ink in Black Soot. And I'm going in with a medium-sized ink blending brush, and I just want to ink all around the edges just to make the background look a little more aged and vintagey, or distressed, if you will. And the reason I didn't go in with an extra large brush is I don't want to go all the way to the center, and sometimes I find if I use a really large brush, I'll end up inking more than I intend to. So I find that this medium size is perfect for just blending the edges. Okay, perfect. Do you see how that already adds a ton of depth and interest? That is exactly what we're going for. And then the next thing I want to do, well, before I do that, let's actually clean up our work surface here. By the way, if you stamp like I do and you haven't yet, go ahead and just using your finger, rub off the adhesive we put on the back, just so that doesn't get in your way moving forward. And then the next thing I want to do is I actually want to add little spider web stamps around the corner. Just, you know, we can never have enough spider webs for a spooky Halloween card. And for that, I'm going to bring in the second stamp set. This one I don't believe has a name, but it is Hero Arts Cling Stamp of the Month. So I'm going to grab both of these two kind of corner spider webs, and then I'm probably going to do them opposite of each other. So I'll have a large one up here, and then down here, and then a small one here, and a small one here. And I am going to stamp this with my embossing ink, and then use white embossing powder so that these corner spider webs really show up. I'm also going to do this by hand, which feels a little extra risky, especially for someone like me, but I don't know, that just seems, that feels like the right thing to do. Okay, so I've got my big spider web stamp here, but before I do that, I actually am going to brush just a tiny bit of anti-static powder on all of these corners. I don't want to use too much powder because I can't really go in with a wet rag like I normally do to get the excess anti-static powder off, but I am just going to do a light dusting, and hopefully that's enough. Again, we're going for a distressed vintage looking card, so if we have a few specks of embossing powder outside of the lines, I don't think it's the end of the world. Now let's go ahead and do our stamping, and I'm going to try and work as quickly as I can, keeping in mind I do need to be accurate, but I want to make sure I get all four corners before the ink starts to dry. All right, corners 1 and 2. Now let's go ahead and do the smaller webs for the other 2 corners. Okay, now quickly before this dries, I'm going to bring in my heat embossing tray, and I'm just going to pour this white detail embossing powder on all 4 corners. I'm going to try to avoid getting it anywhere I don't need it because I didn't put anti-static powder in the middle, remember? Okay, now let's see how well we did. Oh, that was not a smart way to dump off my embossing powder, but you know what? You live and you learn. Okay, so not perfect. You can see that I have quite a bit of a dusting of embossing powder here on the edges. I am going to go in with a small dry paintbrush and just try and brush some of these specks off. Again, not looking for perfection, but I do want it to be a little cleaner than that. So I'm going to go in and do that, and I will catch you right back. Okay, I went in and cleaned up these edges quite a bit. Is it perfect? No, but I think it is just perfect enough. And now I'm going to go in with my heat gun and just apply some heat to all 4 corners to melt this embossing powder. And then our background should be mostly complete. All right, and there you have it, a nice spooky background for our Halloween card. Don't you love how these little corner spider webs really stick out with the white heat embossing? Now our background is mostly complete. I say mostly because we're gonna do a little bit of work with it here in a second, but for now, I'm gonna go ahead and set it to the side so we can start working on our focal point. Okay, and for the focal point of the card, I'm going to be using the die of the month, which comes with this really beautiful ornate frame die, as well as a couple of silhouette dies. So we have a man here and a woman. I think there's another die in the set as well, but I don't have it by me right now. But for today's card, we're just going to use the man. And there's another set called Haunted Romance, which comes with a few extra dies. And that one includes a skeleton kind of profile as well. So hear me out. This is the idea for today's card. And it may not make much sense right now, but I'm going to go ahead and explain it anyway. So for the front of the card, we are going to have this frame. And I'm actually imagining a mirror more than a picture frame. And I'm going to cut this out in gold. And then we're going to do a centerpiece, which will look like a mirror. And on the front side, we'll have the man's silhouette, but I'm gonna make a spinner card, meaning this little middle oval will spin, and when you spin it, the other side will have the profile of the skeleton. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the concept that I'm working with today. And for the frame, I'm going to cut it out in gold. And this is actually a matte gold cardstock. You see how it's not super glossy and shiny? You can't really see myself in it. I love that. This is from Simon Says Stamp, I believe. Again, I'll have everything linked down in the description. And let's go ahead and cut this frame out. Okay, so we have the frame cut out. Be sure to keep this oval for scraps, this gold matte cardstock. I promise you'll be back to it, so hang on to that. And then we do have a bunch of small little pieces here. that I will probably go ahead and poke out off camera. And I'm also going to run this through one more time, maybe just with the granite gray cardstock. I do want to layer up the frame just so that it's a little thicker and more substantial. All right, and there we go. We have our completed frame. As you saw, I did go ahead and double it up with a piece of the gray cardstock. Now, I just did that to add a little bit of thickness to the frame. You don't have to do that. You could just do the single layer of gold or whatever color you choose. And just a note, I did use the gray so that when you're looking at the profile of the card, it doesn't stand out as much and it'll match the background of the card. Another thing I will note while I'm thinking about it is the tops and bottoms of this frame are not the same. You can see that we have this little pointy part at the top, which is larger than the little pointy part at the bottom. I'm assuming this is the top, but just a note, if you're using this frame, it is not the same up and down. Okay, let's go ahead and set that down. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the inside of the frame, so the actual mirror piece. But before we do that, I do want to take just a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Cricut. If you know me, you know that I love my Cricut, and today I'm actually going to be doing a new project, or at least new to me, and I'm going to be creating some custom Christmas ornaments. Now, a little fun fact about me, one of the things that I most look forward to about every holiday season is this Christmas ornament exchange that me and 5 of my very closest friends have done for the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years now, and it's become an annual tradition, and it's something that I look forward to every single year. If you're familiar with a white elephant gift exchange, it's pretty much the same thing, except the only rule is you're only allowed to gift Christmas ornaments. It started as a random idea that we had just on a whim one holiday season, and over the years it's turned into an event that we look forward to every year. And the exchange has changed a little bit over the years. A couple of our friends moved away 2 years ago, and so the ornament exchange has kind of become this thing that brings us back together every year around the holidays, because we all make it a priority to find a weekend that we can all get together and do our ornament exchange. It's even turned into a fun event where we like to book an Airbnb and use it as a little getaway and just reconnect and plug back into our community. And I mention this because, no, I'm not creating ornaments to exchange for our ornament exchange this year. I'm actually creating ornaments for all of our dogs. This group of friends, including myself, we all are obsessed with our dogs. All of our dogs are best friends, and that is one of the fun things about getting everyone back together, is getting all the dogs back together to have a little reunion and cause some ruckus. And I was thinking about the ornament exchange and realized our dogs never get to participate. So this year, they're not participating in the exchange, but I thought that it would be fun to create some custom ornaments with the names of all of our dogs on it. And to do that, I'm actually using this brand new technique to me where I'm using glass etching cream to literally etch into these glass ornaments the names and a paw print of all of the dogs. Now, I will warn you, this glass etching cream is a very strong acid, so if you're going to attempt this DIY, please make sure you're using gloves and protective eyewear. But basically what I'm doing here is I created a stencil using removable vinyl, and then I used some Cricut transfer tape to transfer that vinyl stencil to the ornament, and then simply applied the glass etching cream. After leaving the etching cream to sit for about 20 minutes, you can see that you are left with this beautifully etched design on your glass ornament. Now, you can also see it's a little bit splotchy. I probably could have let the cream sit on there longer than 20 minutes, but you know what? I don't think the dogs are gonna mind, so I think we're fine. Now at this point you can either leave the glass ornaments empty or you can choose to fill them with whatever you'd like. I chose to fill them with pom-poms, and I actually chose pom-poms that coordinated with the color of each dog's coats. You can see for Hudson I used a light brown. We also affectionately call him Huddy, hence the ornament name. And then I used an off-white / yellow for Bo, who is a yellow lab. And then for Rosie I actually used a mix of white and light brown because she is a little white dog with brown spots. And just like that, we have 3 beautifully personalized ornaments that Hudson is just so eager to gift to his furry 4-legged friends. Everything used for this project will also be linked in the description. And for that, I'm going to grab my oval infinity dies, also from Hero Arts. If you know me, you know I love my infinity dies. They come in a lot of different shapes and obviously different sizes. And for this card, we're actually gonna need 2 of them. So I'm going to get the, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th and 8th oval die. I already did some measuring before this, don't worry. And using the smaller of the 2, that's what I'm going to use to actually cut out our mirror. And for the mirror, I'm going to grab some more Simon Says Stamp cardstock. This is, what do they call this? Holographic silver. This is another one of my favorite shiny metallic cardstocks. You can see that it has this really kind of distressed, aged look to it. And I'm going to need to cut out 2 sheets of this because it's white on the back, and remember, this is going to be a spinner card, so we need both sides to have this metallic. Okay, so now we have our 2 silver metallic pieces, but before we glue these together, which is, yes, of course, the next logical step, don't do that yet because we do need to add some thread, and that is what is going to give us the little spinner mechanism. For today's card, I'm going to be using black. This is just your regular old embroidery thread. Hopefully I can pull some of this out without too much issue. You can use whatever color you want. You could also use fishing line if you wanted to have more of like an invisible look, if you will. But I'm going to use black because I feel like black is just fine for Halloween, and I don't mind if my thread is seen. It's really not that big of a deal to me. Okay, and what we're going to do is take one of the ovals and apply some tape runner or tape or glue, whatever. I'm using tape runner because I don't know, I feel like it's just easier for this kind of thing. And place the thread right in the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and go over it on top as well. This probably seems like overkill, I know, but you really want that to stay nice and tight and adhered. Okay, now we can go ahead and glue our oval together. So I'm going to go in with some liquid glue and go ahead and put our other oval right on top. Okay, and there you have it. Now we have this little tiny mirror insert on a string situation. And all we have to do now is go ahead and add those silhouettes I showed you earlier. So I'm going to take these 2 dies from the Fancy Die of the Month kit and the Haunted Romance release. Now keep in mind, you can use whatever dies you want for this spinner effect, but I just like the idea of doing these 2 silhouettes. So we have the man and the skeleton, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these out in black. Okay, now we have the man, we have the skeleton. All we have to do now is add them to our mirrored disc. I don't know what to call it. I think I've called that something different every time I've mentioned it now. Here's our man, and I'm doing my best to center this. That looks pretty good, I think. Now, here's the big question. The skeleton die is designed so that it's cut out kind of the opposite direction. Is that okay for the illusion we're going for? I don't really mind it. I'm not sure what the... Y'all, I don't know. I'm not a master of physics. I don't know what the correct direction is, but we're just going to keep it this direction. And if anyone has a problem with it, I am so happy for you that you don't have bigger problems to attend to. Ooh. Did I say that? Okay. Let's go ahead and place Mr. Skelly down. Now remember, we are gluing onto very smooth, shiny cardstock. So if you're using liquid glue, be careful with your placement because the shiny and smooth cardstock like this, if you're using liquid glue, it does tend to shift around. Obviously, once it dries, it's fine, but at first, it can be a little shifty. Okay, so we have our 2 primary elements here. You can see that I left a gap just large enough in here so that this guy is able to spin once it's on the card. But I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, at least if you've never made a spinner card before, how is it going to spin? And it's going to spin because we're also now going to cut a big oval out of the middle of our background. Now, when choosing a die for this, you want to make sure that it's the right size. So I'm going to go back to my oval dies. I already picked one out. And this little guy is the perfect size because if you notice, the opening is just about, I think it's either the exact same size or a little bit larger than the opening of the frame. So the frame will cover the opening, but it's large enough that our small die in here will fit inside of it. Are you following? Hopefully so. Okay, so I'm going to line this up in the middle. So you want to get this as close to the middle as you can. This is probably one of the most important pieces of this whole card. So if you want to get a ruler out, just make sure that your oval is perfectly in the middle, or at least as perfect as it can be in the middle of this card front. Okay, so we have our oval. Let's just go ahead and double check that the frame fits nicely over that and hides all the edges. Okay, that looks pretty dang near perfect if you ask me. Now this is where things get tricky, right? Because this is just a card front. It's not a full card yet. So we're going to have to cut another circle through the front panel of our card base. So let me go ahead and grab a card base. And for my card bases, I just use 110-pound smooth white cardstock. I don't use anything fancy. I just use the cardstock that you can buy at Michael's or Joann. And then I cut it in half. So now what I have here is a 5.5 inch by an 8.5 inch piece of cardstock. And then I score it right in the middle at 4 1/4. And just go ahead and fold it and burnish it. Okay, so we have our A2 size card base now, and remember, we only want to cut an oval in this front panel. We want to leave this back panel just as it is. So what we're going to do for that is we're actually going to open it, lay it down flat like so, and then, I don't know if this is the correct way to do this, but this is how I do it, so proceed at your own risk. But you're going to go ahead and place your front panel on top of the other front panel, I guess, of the card base, and line it up so that it's square on all the corners. And then what you're going to do is take the same exact oval die that you used to cut out this opening and line it up just right in the same exact opening, just like so. Okay, and now what you can do is take a little piece of low-tack tape, or mint tape in this case, and just hold the die in place. And then what you're going to do is just run this through your die cutting machine once again so that you can cut out the same oval out of the front panel of your card base. Okay, and there you go. Now we have a card base with the exact same oval and the exact same position. So now we're truly on the home stretch here. Now to finish off our spinner, it is actually super simple. All we're going to do is add some adhesive to the top part and the bottom part of our opening. I'm using tape runner, but I'm gonna go in afterwards with some liquid glue on top as well. Now, I don't know if that's necessary. I'm a little crazy, so, you know, do whatever feels comfortable to you. And then I'm gonna try to place this guy as close to the center as possible, and then drop that thread into the adhesive so that it catches. And then for extra insurance, I'm going to go ahead and add more adhesive on top. And remember, this is going to be spun quite a bit, so you really want to hold that string in place just so that it, you know, can be spun as many times as possible. Okay, and then from this point, you can go ahead and clip off these little bottom pieces because you don't necessarily need those or want them to show. And then from there, it's just like applying any other card base to a card front. So go ahead and apply your adhesive all around. And like I said, for a little extra insurance, I am also going to go ahead and apply a little bit of liquid glue to this thread. And why not? Let's add some out here. I'm an over adheser. I know, it is what it is. Okay, now let's go ahead and line it up on the card front. To line up the card, I'm going to use the assistance of my score buddy here. Now this does get a little tricky because your little mirror here will want to spin, but try not to let that mess you up. Oh, you know what? I just realized we did not even glue the gold frame on, but that's fine. We'll apply the gold frame here as the last step. All right, perfect. So we have our card just about completely done. Let's go ahead and add some glue to our frame. You'll also notice we don't have a sentiment yet. I am going to grab a sentiment stamp from one of the other Halloween stamp sets and emboss it in white on some black paper. That will be the finishing touch to this card, or you could always just put a sentiment on the inside if you want. There is a lot going on the front of this card already. Okay, incoming. Since we did all of that measuring and testing, this should fit just perfectly around our mirror piece. Now at this point you can go ahead and apply any sentiment stamp you want. I am going to use a sentiment from the September card kit from Hero Arts, just because I really like this Happy Halloween stamp and I think it's the perfect size to place right down here in the bottom right. So I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss this on some black cardstock, and I will meet you back in a second to finish the card. Okay, I've got the sentiment embossed, just a very pretty Happy Halloween here, and I also added a little bit of foam tape on the back. So let's go ahead and apply this, and then I think we can call the card officially completed. Oh, actually that's not true. We still have the most important step, which is to stamp the back. All right, and there you have it. We have our completed Halloween card. Now there are a couple of ways you can use this card. You can, of course, just open it and spin it a little bit like so, or the most fun thing to do is go ahead and twist this up. You're basically winding the card up, and what's really fun is to wind this up until you feel it get nice and tight, and then close it. And then you can go ahead and slip this into the envelope or send it off in the mail, whatever you want to do. But when the recipient receives it, they're going to open it and it's going to do that, which is very fun. And I think it creates kind of a cool optical illusion with the man and the skeleton. But that's it. That's the card, y'all. I hope that you enjoyed this and found it somewhat helpful. If you did enjoy this video, I would really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up and a comment if you are feeling so inclined. And I would also especially appreciate it if you wanted to subscribe and join the channel. I do have a couple of exciting announcements coming up that I can't say quite yet, but be sure to subscribe and you will know about those very shortly. Thanks again so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, y'all.